The sun rose over the forests and oceans of New Avalon like it always had. Birds flew across the sky, rivers ran through green valleys, and people went to work with the quiet peace of a world that had never known war. New Avalon was a colony, planet far from Earth, built for science, farming, and learning. There were no soldiers, no weapons, just homes, schools, and labs full of curious minds. Then, without warning, the sky changed. A flash of light appeared above the planet, and then, more. Huge shapes dropped out of faster-than-light travel, ships, but not human ones. They were dark, jagged, and cold-looking. They hovered above New Avalon like silent hunters. People looked up. Some thought it was a mistake. Others feared the worst. It was the worst. Without any message or reason, the alien ships opened fire. Beams of energy cut through the air, smashing into cities, towns, and farms. Fires spread. Buildings fell. The ground shook like it never had before. Screams filled the air, but no one could hear them over the sound of death. Lisa Carter was at her lab when it happened. She worked on weather control systems, trying to help farmers grow better crops. She saw the first blast hit the next city over, turning it into smoke and ash. She tried to run, but the building shook so hard she fell to the floor. Outside, chaos took over. People ran in every direction. Emergency sirens wailed. The radio said nothing but static. Lisa grabbed what she could and got into a small escape pod with 3 others. They didn't know where they were going. They only knew they had to leave. As the pod launched into space, they watched their home die. New Avalon burned. The attack lasted less than 6 hours. By the time it was over, the planet was gone, not just damaged, gone, turned into pieces floating in space. The alien fleet vanished as quickly as it came, leaving behind silence and ruin. Weeks passed before the news reached Earth. Nobody believed it at first. How could a peaceful colony be destroyed so fast? Who would do this? Then the escape pods started arriving. Few and broken, carrying survivors with haunted eyes and shaking hands. They told stories of horror, of machines that felt no pity, and voices that spoke no words before killing millions. Governments across human space called meetings. People held vigils. Anger grew. Lisa Carter stood in front of a camera, tears on her face, and said, "They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to hide. But we won't." And across the stars, someone listened. People across human space could not stop talking about what happened. New Avalon was gone. 900,000 lives lost in a single day. The attack was fast, silent, and cruel. Nobody knew who did it, but everyone knew one thing. They had to respond. Governments met in emergency sessions. On Earth, on Mars, on distant colonies, leaders argued. Some wanted peace. They said, "We don't know enough," or "We must not rush into war." Others were angry. They said, "This is not just an attack on New Avalon. It is a message to all of us." In the end, one voice rose above the rest. Admiral Henry Cole, once retired, now called back into service, stood before the world and said, "If we do nothing, we tell them it's okay to hurt us again." The vote came in. The United Human Council agreed. Humanity would act. They named it Operation Phoenix. Not because they wanted revenge, but because they wanted to rise from this moment stronger than before. Factories turned on like never before. Ships that were meant for trade were refitted for battle. Mining vessels became fighters. Cargo haulers carried weapons instead of goods. Even old science ships joined the cause. Everywhere, people signed up. Pilots, engineers, doctors, mechanics. Millions of civilians stepped forward. They didn't have military training, but they had hearts full of fire. Lisa Carter watched it all unfold from her small apartment on Earth. She wasn't a soldier. She was just a woman who had lost her brother. But when she saw the first ships preparing to launch, she knew she had to be part of it. She volunteered for a science vessel heading to the front lines. Her job was to study alien tech, to understand what had destroyed New Avalon. She didn't know if she could help, but she had to try. Meanwhile, messages went out across human space. Every colony, every station, every ship with even a working engine was asked to join, and they did. From the icy moons of Titan to the floating cities of Alpha Centauri, humans answered the call. When the final count came in, It stunned the galaxy. 900,000 ships. Not just warships, but everything humanity had. A sea of steel and hope stretching across the stars. Henry Cole stood on the bridge of his command ship and looked at the fleet. He said only one thing. This is not revenge. This is justice. Then, with engines roaring and hearts burning, the Armada lifted off. A storm was coming, and it was heading straight for those who thought they could destroy one human colony and walk away. Space had never seen anything like it. 900,000 ships all flying together, moving like a single wave across the stars. They came from every human world, Earth, Mars, Titan, Alpha Centauri, and beyond. Some were fast warships built for battle, others were old cargo haulers turned into fighters overnight. There were even passenger liners filled with volunteers who wanted to help however they could. The Armada moved in silence at first, jumping through space using faster-than-light drives. Each jump took them closer to the enemy. Nobody knew exactly where the attackers came from, but they had a lead. One of the escape pods from New Avalon carried a broken signal, a distress code that was still active when the planet died. Lisa Carter and her team worked hard to piece it together. After weeks of study, they found what they needed, a direction. As the fleet traveled, it grew. More ships joined along the way. Miners, traders, explorers, all offered their help. Even colonies that had not spoken to Earth in years sent messages saying they were coming. Humanity was not just fighting back, it was showing the galaxy what it meant to be united. Not everyone welcomed the sight of the massive fleet. Alien traders and diplomats watched with worry. Some feared this. Many humans in one place meant something dangerous was about to happen. Others understood. They had seen what happened to New Avalon. They knew why the humans were angry. Henry Cole stayed on the command ship, watching reports come in. He didn't sleep much. He read updates, studied enemy tech, and made sure every pilot, engineer, and soldier knew what they were doing. He didn't want revenge. He wanted balance. Lisa Carter sat in a lab on her science vessel, looking at data from the Zayari, the name they now gave to the aliens who destroyed New Avalon. She found proof they had known New Avalon was full of civilians. Proof they didn't care. She shared the findings with the fleet, and the anger burned brighter. Some called for immediate war. Others wanted to wait, but Henry Cole knew one thing. The time for talking was over. They reached the edge of Zayari space. The alien homeworld was close. The final jump would take them straight to the enemy's door. The fleet paused for just a moment. Pilots checked their weapons. Engineers ran last-minute tests. People held their breath. Then, over the comms, Henry Cole spoke. "We do this not because we enjoy war. We do this because we remember New Avalon." And with that, the Armada jumped forward. A sea of fire and steel flew into enemy space. And the Zayari finally understood. They had made a terrible mistake. The Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel just outside Zayari space. The stars were dim here, blocked by dust clouds and the glow of distant planets. Ahead, enemy ships moved fast, trying to warn their homeworld. But they were too late. Human scouts had already mapped the system. Defense platforms floated near key planets and huge warships patrolled the borders. The Zayari thought they were ready for a fight. They were wrong. Henry Cole gave the order: spread out, stay hidden, and wait. The human fleet split into groups, hiding behind moons and asteroids. Some ships used cloaking tech. Others simply stayed silent, engines off. The Zayari searched the sky, confused. They could not find the massive force that had followed them across the stars. Lisa Carter sat on her science vessel, watching data come in. She studied Zayari signals, looking for weaknesses. After hours of work, she found something important, a way to shut down parts of their planetary shields even if only for a short time. She sent the plan to command. It was risky, but it could work. Henry Cole read the message and gave the go-ahead. A wave of small drone ships launched from the main fleet. They flew silently toward enemy lines, carrying powerful electromagnetic pulses. When they reached the shield generators, they struck. Bright flashes lit up the dark, and one by one the planet's defenses flickered and died. The Zayari screamed over comms, calling for help. But there was none coming. Then, the humans attacked. 900,000. Ships surged forward like a storm. Lasers, missiles, and fighters filled the sky. Explosions bloomed across space as human forces hit the enemy hard and fast. Some Zayari ships tried to fight back, but they were outmatched. Human pilots worked together like a single mind, moving in perfect waves. Cargo ships dropped bombs while old mining rigs shot beams of energy at enemy bases. Lisa watched from her ship as a Zayari station broke apart, spinning into darkness. She felt no joy, only purpose. Henry Cole stood on the bridge, calm and focused. He didn't speak much during the battle. He only gave orders, clear, sharp, and deadly. After hours of fighting, the skies above Zir Prime were full of burning wreckage. The Zayari fleet was broken. Their homeworld was exposed. One last message came from the planet below. "We surrender." Henry Cole listened, then said only 3 words. No terms. No mercy. The Armada moved in, and the final strike began. The battle was over, but the war was not. Zayari ships lay broken in space. Their stations were silent. What was left of their fleet drifted in pieces, burned and lifeless. The humans had won, but they did not celebrate. They had come for justice, not glory. Henry Cole stood on the bridge of his command ship, looking down at Zir Prime, the homeworld of the species that had destroyed New Avalon. It was a green and blue planet, full of cities, forests, and oceans. Millions of Zayari still lived there, but none dared speak after the message they had sent. "We surrender," Cole had replied. "No terms, no mercy." Now, he gave a new order. Not to destroy the planet, but to change it forever. Waves of human ships moved into orbit. Massive weapons platforms deployed from the largest carriers. They fired not at people but at the land and sky, targeting military sites, factories, and energy grids. The goal was not to kill every Zayari, but to make sure they could never attack again. Zayari leaders tried to reach out. They sent messages begging for peace. They offered technology, resources, even their own lives. But no, unanswered. The humans had already decided. Lisa Carter watched from her science vessel as the surface changed. Great storms formed where bombs had struck. Once powerful cities were now ruins. She felt nothing but silence inside her. This was not revenge. It was balance. After the bombardment stopped, the humans began rounding up survivors. Zayari soldiers, scientists, and leaders were taken from their homes and placed in holding ships. They would not be killed. They would be put on trial. Weeks passed. Reports came in from across the Zayari Empire. Without their homeworld, their forces collapsed. Other colonies surrendered without a fight. Human ships took control, not to rule, but to ensure peace. On a neutral moon far from the fighting, preparations began. A court was built. Alien observers arrived, some curious, some afraid. They wanted to see how humanity would handle its first true war crime. Lisa was asked to testify. She agreed, not for herself, but for those who couldn't speak anymore. When the time came, she told the truth. She showed the data, the signals, the proof that the Zayari had known New Avalon was full of civilians, and didn't care. The room fell silent. Henry Cole stayed away from the trials. He had done his job. Now, the law would do its part. Justice had taken many forms. Fire, steel, silence, and now it would speak. The trials began on a quiet moon far from any war. It was a place chosen for peace, where humans and aliens could meet without fear. The Zayari leaders were brought there, guarded by human soldiers. They walked with their heads down, no longer rulers of a proud empire, but prisoners waiting for judgment. Lisa Carter arrived with other survivors. She had not wanted to come back into the spotlight, but she knew her voice mattered. She carried with her the broken data drives from New Avalon, the last messages sent before the attack, and proof that the Zayari had known exactly what they were destroying. The court was full of people, humans from across the stars, alien observers from neutral worlds, and even some Zayari who had turned against their own kind to help the truth come out. When Lisa stood up, the room went silent. She spoke clearly without anger. She told the story of New Avalon, of the lives lost, of the silence in the sky after the bombs fell. She showed the records, the final calls for help, the signals the Zayari had ignored. When she finished, many in the room had tears in their eyes. The trial lasted weeks. More evidence came forward. The Zayari High Command had not only attacked New Avalon, they had studied human colonies for years, deciding which one would hurt the most if destroyed. In the end, the verdict was clear: guilty. Not just of war crimes, but of crimes against humanity itself. The punishment was not death. It was worse. The Zayari leaders were sentenced to life in deep space prisons floating far from any star. They would live, but never see their home again. They would remember what they had done, and they would have nothing but time to think about it. Henry Cole did not attend the sentencing. He had gone back to Earth, quietly slipping away once his part was done. He didn't want medals or speeches. He had fought because it was needed, not for praise. As the news spread across human space, people watched and listened. Children learned about New Avalon in school. Cities built statues of those who had died. And every colony remembered the lesson: you do not hurt one human and expect the rest to stay quiet. Lisa returned to work, helping rebuild what was lost. Not buildings, but memories. She started a center for peace and learning, not to forget the pain, but to make sure it would never happen again. And far away, in the dark of space, someone else was watching. Someone who now knew better than to test the strength of humanity. Years passed. The stars were quiet again, but not the same as before. Something had changed. The galaxy now knew. Humanity was not to be tested. On Earth, on Mars, on Titan, and across 100 colonies, New Avalon was remembered. Statues stood in city squares. Names of the lost were carved into stone walls. Schools taught children what had happened. Not just the attack, but the reply. How one act of cruelty had been answered by 900,000 ships. Lisa Carter wrote a book. It was not about war or weapons. It was about people. About how even in the darkest moment, humans had come together. She called it One World, 900,000 Voices. It became required reading in many places. Henry Cole stayed away from politics. He lived quietly on a small moon near Earth, growing trees and watching the sky. Reporters tried to find him. Leaders wanted his advice. But he always said no. He believed that what had been done was enough. Peace was not made by generals, but by those who chose not to fight unless they had to. The Zayari Empire was gone. Their cities lay silent. Some survivors lived in exile, watched by human forces, never allowed to rebuild their military. They were not slaves, not prisoners, but not free to threaten anyone again. Other alien species took note. Some feared humanity. Others respected them. Trade with peaceful worlds grew. Alliances formed. No one wanted to be next. In space, the Armada was never fully disbanded. Ships still patrolled borders. Not for war, but for warning. A message to any who might think of hurting humans again. A child on a colony world once asked Lisa, "Was it worth it?" She thought for a long time before answering. "No war is ever worth it," she said. "But standing up for what's right, that is." And so, the story of New Avalon did not end in pain. It ended in strength. Across the stars, humanity walked, taller, not because they wanted power, but because they had shown what it meant to hurt one of them and wake all the rest.